Meeting with oral communications. Hopefully you've all seen the agenda. This portion of the meeting is reserved for people who wish to speak on items that are not on the agenda. If you wish to speak on such an item, you may. We will not be in a position of making any decisions on those items. If you want to speak on any item, either on the agenda or not, if you could fill out a card that Rick is holding up there, bring it up here, we'll be able to call you by name. I don't see anybody rushing for a card, so looks like we won't have any oral communications tonight. We have a couple of housekeeping items here not related to the library, so if you'll bear with us, there's some business we need to get through urgently. So we have a new business item here on the sale of surplus property, and Ralph, if you could take that, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, last night we held the auction at the time and place that you had appointed for the 3 properties in Oak Valley. We received one bid, as noted in your council report, of $800,000, which was less than the minimum acceptable bid of $1.2 million. We received no other sealed bids, and at the time the auction was open, no bidders came forward to offer a bid on the property. Therefore, we recommend that you, in accordance with the rules set forth in your resolution of February, that you reject this one bid, return the deposit to the bidder, and we would like to ask you to allow us to report back to you in June with a proposal for a time to re-advertise the properties when we think the market might be a little better, and we will consult with our appraisers and real estate professionals and report that back to you in June.
Any questions for Ralph? I'd entertain a motion.
I move to reject one bid and return the deposit.
Second.
Et cetera, et cetera. Right. The full staff recommendation?
Yeah, etc. Yeah, full staff
Okay.
Recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to the main event.
You gotta vote.
Oh, we do need a vote. Please vote. We have no lights.
Voice vote.
Voice vote. If all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All against, say nay. Motion carries unanimously.
The gentleman's here tonight. He can see the Director of Administrative Services, Mr. Zichich, to receive your check back.
Okay, moving to item 2, which is why we are all here, the study session on the library. Who's going to introduce?
Begin briefly. The presentation you'll be seeing this afternoon is the culmination of an effort which began back in July with a series of public workshops. Then a little later in October, City Council established the basic concept by locating the specific sites of each of the buildings. Since that time, thousands, literally thousands of hours have gone into developing this concept that you're going to be seeing. The work of a city is to build community, and building this new library provides a golden opportunity and a unique opportunity to build community in Cupertino. That's because nothing in Cupertino is more central to our community value than our library. This library and its setting in the Civic Center will provide a focal point for our community. Let me turn the meeting over to Ralph Qualls, who is the field marshal of this project.
Thank you, Dave. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, ladies and gentlemen, this is a project that began some years ago, as you know, without going into the history. Just to let you know that this is a critical and important and frankly exciting point in this project. We have reached the stage where with the council's approval last October of the concept, the 2-building concept with surrounding porticos and a plaza in between, we developed the detailed concept drawings which you see all around the room and which you'll see in this presentation. The Civic Center, if you could go to the aerial, yeah, we could kill the lights now. As you can see, thank you, Kathy. Yeah. As you can see, the concept, which went through all the community meetings and was initially approved by the City Council, has the library in the place of the original library. It stands today, a community hall, which is in this configuration and near the existing City Hall. You'll see a great deal more detail from the architects on this, but just to introduce this concept, it extends way beyond just the central plaza. The parking lot is being reconfigured, and the sidewalk in front as well, and then this grand plaza, which will be at the level of the library and the City Hall, rather than depressed as it is now. One corner of it will be depressed, and we'll show you how that works later on in the presentation. It's important to note that with this combination of buildings, the library sets in a very large footprint here, containing all of its programs, and the community hall over here is designed with an architecture and a style that will not allow the library to overpower it. This building is 1/10 the floor space of this building, and so it's important that it stand out. It's a centerpiece of the plaza. The library occupies a very good location and a grand space that will help frame this plaza from one end to the other. Could we go to the next slide? Let's go to the next one. Before we begin talking about the community hall, I just wanted to note that this entire plaza, this Civic Center, includes the library, includes the community hall, and includes the existing City Hall. Ties them all together and creates a very grand space. That's something that we've all felt, and those of us who've lived in Cupertino and those of us who followed the city have all felt that was missing in our city for some time. This is the opportunity, as the city manager said, in the life cycle of a city, it's a rare opportunity that you get to do this, and this is our one golden opportunity, and we think this solution is one that everyone will enjoy and be proud of. I'm going to introduce two architects. The first will speak is Kathy Simon, who is the senior partner of SMWM, our design architects, and secondly, our landscape architect who has designed the plaza, Mary Margaret Jones of Hargreaves Associates. Kathy?
Do I have to push that?
No, you're on.
Thank you, Ralph. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we're absolutely thrilled to be here today. This is a very, very important day for us, and I hope for you. I'd like to go through the design a little bit. You have a model in front of you. I hope that all of the people in the audience and you have had a chance to look at some of the drawings, which we'll also show here. But the idea is to make the most gregarious, friendly, civic space we can, with an array of buildings that in their own way make a community here, but that are really for your community. It's a way that you can bring people with many different activities, including civic activities and gatherings of organizations like the Rotary Club, for example, or the Boy Scouts, or any number of things that could happen here. Weddings, you'll see, things will come to this space. And to share that with the City Hall and then with the library. This makes a place in Cupertino for everyone, a welcoming, wonderful place for people. Next. I'd like to talk a little bit now about the community hall. It has a very simple plan. It faces the Civic Plaza. It's protected from the sun and rain by a covered walkway which connects it to the library and to the City Hall. Coming down from the plaza, you can come straight in on the axis of Town Center Lane, or come in on a wide plaza from Torrey Avenue and enter the lobby of the community hall, which is also in itself a large space, a wonderful ante-space for meetings, a place of gathering before going into an event, and so on. The community hall serves many, many different purposes. In this case, we've shown it as a meeting room, which accommodates a large number of people. Go back one more. It has a south garden and north garden, which means that the building is very open and what we call transparent. It means when you're in this building and in events where it's appropriate, you can see outside, see the trees, see the light of the sky, see the landscape. It has a raised platform, which has, again, many purposes, and some support spaces, including a catering kitchen, which will help the multi-use function of this building, but also a conference room for smaller meetings that might be pre-meetings or so on. Next. This is what it might look like set up as a meeting. It's a very tall, classic space. It's made of, a lot of parts of it are made of wood and stone. It has a beautiful open ceiling, which is uplifting. And again, this views out all the time to the landscape that's going to be so pretty in Cupertino, and already is. This shows the platform in a meeting configuration. This could be a council meeting or a seminar, and a very comfortable array of people. Next, please. It also could be used for all kinds of other celebrations. For example, a Chinese New Year celebration, which people can come to from all over Cupertino and share their community together. Thank you. Next. It also could be used as a wonderful space for dining or for evening events. And in this case, we show it set up with large tables. Again, the dais might contain seating, but it also might contain a lectern, and it might contain a jazz quartet, for example, as shown in this rendering, where here you see a night view of what a dinner might be like in Cupertino's new community hall, with, again, a lit-up landscape outside with possibly a pre-function space, for example, in this south garden, beautiful lanterns that light up the space, and then music or events or speakers, a convivial place for people to come together. Next. The idea of the building architecturally is that it's both civic and informal. It's very much an indoor-outdoor building, a building which looks out to the community space in front of it, which looks to the landscape, and which looks to the sky. It's a tall building. It holds its own with the City Hall, which is also a large building, and the library. It forms a transition from the architecture of the City Hall to the new library as well. It makes a family of buildings here. But in no way is it like a child to these other buildings. It has a presence, it has civic energy and civic heft. It also has a wonderful forecourt, which Mary Margaret will tell you about, which is a gathering space for all kinds of people. Next. The library is a more complex building, a larger building. It's about 57,000 square feet. It's, again, a very open building. Its entry is on axis with the City Hall. It's connected, as I said, by loggias. In this case, there's a covered arcade that's on the ground floor of the library, and we're proposing that at the corner of Torrey and the Civic Plaza, that actually the library house a little cafe, which is really the trend in libraries today, and could then be a place where somebody who's actually spending a lot of time in the library could go for a coffee. It's a place that families could use to buy picnic food. It's a place where people wanting just to take a break from studying can go sit around outside or inside. It's a small area, but it really can enliven this civic space and the library as well. It's not part of the library in the sense that you have to go outside to get to it, which solves the problem of the control of the library, which is very important to all of you and to the librarians, of course. But it's a very good partner with libraries. And every library that I've seen being done today has, if they can possibly do it, a cafe like this. Again, this loggia you can see in this model photograph. The library has a great roof, which houses above, on the second floor, the major stacks of the library for adults. Light is brought into it to illuminate the entry to the building and the stairway that connects the two floors. Again, you remember that there's a courtyard in this building and a side that's also civic along Torrey Avenue. The materials are simple: stone, wood, metal, glass. It's very open. This shows the connection between the library and the City Hall and the civic community hall here. This is the cafe. We have little model tables and umbrellas, which I urge you to look at. And this is Torrey Avenue, so you can see what the whole space is like as an ensemble, a collection of buildings that are related but distinctive. Next. The plan of the library, I'll just mention very simple elements. This is the entry. You come through the control point, which makes sure that the books are secured and always checked out. There's a Friends area right at that lobby and the circulation desk. And again, the view through this will look right at this courtyard, which opens a little bit to get even more light and better views of the Redwood Grove to the south. This is the staff area, which is a large area, very important for a library of this size, and Friends area for their storage of books. If you come in and you walk to the right, you see the browsing area, which is new books, magazines, informal reading, again, very connected to both the Civic Plaza and to Torrey. And then the large children's area. One of the really special things about the Cupertino program for a library is that a very, very large part of it is dedicated to children, which in my view is a wonderful investment in the future of this community and the future of our country. It's very large. It has room for little kids and big kids. It has a story room that looks out into the redwoods. It has a group study room for homework. And again, this wonderful courtyard, which it's related to, and I can imagine on a beautiful day, a story time happening out in this courtyard, or mothers and fathers reading to their kids in the library courtyard, which is a beautiful outdoor space. We're so blessed here to have such a wonderful climate, and you especially in Cupertino, it's unlike San Francisco, which is freezing all the time. This is actually a very affable climate. So the indoor-outdoor life of this building can happen in a secured way, as the community hall is an indoor-outdoor building as well. Next. You go up the stairs and you find the adult collections. There's, in this part of the library, which faces the Civic Plaza, there's the young adults, a large reference area, and the adult collections will be separated by fiction and nonfiction. There are so many settings in this building for reading and enjoyment, I think, of books and being in a community space like this. You can sit looking at the courtyard. You can sit along the edge looking at the Civic Plaza. If you choose, you can sit looking at Torrey. Many people will be able to choose what they really, really enjoy the most about being in a beautiful building with a lot of wonderful books and other materials. There are some tables that are actually within the stacks. This is something that's done very frequently in libraries, so that someone looking for a book has a very convenient place to sit down and rest or read. Next. This rendering shows what it might look like from the second floor, where there's a big reference desk as you come up the stairs, looking into the courtyard, and you can see the redwood trees behind, the wonderful view down this side of the courtyard toward the redwood grove again. And the idea is to really borrow the landscape that you have around this building and bring it in. The building will be filled with light. There's a large, what we call clear story window, a large raised window on this side of the courtyard and this side, which will bring light deep into the library. It's very important to have enough room in a library like this for all the books, but it's also important to remember that reading and the life of the mind are about light. And this is a building that will be very light and airy, very friendly, and very open. Next. Mary Margaret's now going to talk about the Civic Plaza and its details.
Thank you, Kathy. Next, Laura. One of the things that was really important to us as we began this process was to conceive of a place that would be distinct to Cupertino and distinct within Cupertino. And one of the things we thought about is the history of this valley and the landscape history of this valley, which is pretty spectacular. It was originally part of the Valley of Heart's Delight, which was full of orchards. It's now Silicon Valley. But that landscape heritage led us to thinking about this place as a very distinct place, set apart from the rest of Cupertino. So not dominated by cars, not dominated by asphalt, but instead dominated as by trees, the orchard effect, and the idea of an oasis that is a civic heart of Cupertino. So you can see in that plan image and in this model image, and in this case we're looking from Torrey, here's Torrey Avenue. The space, the central Civics Plaza is a very welcoming space, it's a very open space. It creates an opening from Torrey that welcomes you in. And then surrounding it, the parking lot becomes an orchard system. So you're parking beneath shade, and the climate is changed, and it gives a setting for the community hall to be a place within gardens, a place within landscape, and a place within these beautiful orchards. So the space has the plaza proper between City Hall, the Community Hall, and the library becomes a central gathering space that is very multi-use. So it can be one big space in a very grand and elegant way, but within that it has a variety of kinds of spaces as well, and a variety of things going on, so it will be very active and will draw people to it. The plaza along Torrey wraps and fronts the library, and the cafe within the shade of the trees that Kathy mentioned happens at this corner at Torrey. Lawn areas become a place of softness, a place of respite, but they are at the same level as the doorways of the community hall and the library. And then you have a room here that is a room within an outdoor room within a grove of trees. And this grove of trees might be the trees of Cupertino. So we might choose 4 very distinct trees to feature in these rows that are the trees of Cupertino. And then seating beneath those groves, beneath this grove of trees. And the material then in this area might be a very soft material like decomposed granite or crushed stone that is somewhat in between paving and grass. So it's porous, so the trees are happy, the trees thrive, they grow, but it's also hard enough so you can set up a festival, you can set up a performance event, and people can enjoy a very active space. And then in this quadrant of the space, and so in a way it's halves this way, and it's quadrants. In this quadrant you have a smaller grove of trees and a fountain. So it's a very sort of interactive fountain. It's a place to, thanks, Greg. Get those lights back on. It's a place to play within jets of water that are very whimsical, not using lots of water, but getting as much benefit as possible from the sound of water and the white noise it can bring to a space and the activity it can bring to a space as kids flock to be within the sphere of the water. Next. So you can see this overall space that is then broken down into rooms within the overall space. You can see Community Hall then sitting within an extension of Civic Plaza, and then within that, the 2 gardens that Kathy mentioned, the North Garden and the South Garden, that could be quite different one from another. They might be sister city gardens. We'll develop that idea more, but one's on the sunny side and one's on the shady side, and that can be played up in their design. And then all of that sitting within a reconceived parking area that includes trees, as well as a more efficient layout for the cars. Now, one of the things we wanted to do is address the fact that there is a very strong central axis to this space from Town Center Lane. Next. And you can see how this space is arranged on that axis. So it's symmetrically arranged in terms of the library, City Hall, the Community Hall, and the center line of Town Center Lane. But the design of the plaza itself is not slavish to that formality. It uses it, it makes an elegant space, but it also makes a space that has a little more playfulness and not quite the stiff formality that we would have if we just followed those lines. Next. So you can see, looking from the Community Hall toward Town Center Lane, the fabulous mature heritage oaks that frame that axis, and you get this central axis. And on that central axis would be very beautiful special paving, so that it is literally drawn in the ground, and you're aware of that center line, and it's the division between the lawn and the decomposed granite. It's sort of playful. It engages people noticing that this is the way the space is arranged, and so it invites participation. And you can see the cafe under the trees, the fountain area, and you can see another feature, barely, it'll show more in some other images, but there are terraces along this edge. So there is a walkway from the library to City Hall. City Hall is set apart somewhat. City Hall is set apart by these alleys of trees, these rows of trees, so that City Hall has a certain separation from the more vibrant activity of the plaza, and the library and the Community Hall have a much more direct engagement with that vibrancy of the plaza. And then here, this part of the plaza is slightly sunk 2 to 3 feet, so that there are terraces And those people right there are sitting on those terraces. So it forms a small amphitheater, much different than the kind of space that's out there now, where the whole thing becomes a bathtub. This is more a tilt, so you have one corner that becomes a seating corner. Next. And you can see in this image then, those terraces are here along this edge, and then the fountain area is here, so that it is a fountain that when the jets are off will still feel like a garden space, a plaza space, and when the jets are on, it's something entirely different. Now, one of the inherent goals of this project is to make the parking lot more efficient and to have this project address Torrey in a more active way. So you can see both of those things in this drawing. The plaza would literally extend across Torrey and claim the street so that it becomes the front door to the plaza and you are invited in. And there would be no parking in that zone, and there would be drop-off for the City Hall and Library and Plaza and Community Hall. And the parking is then reoriented so it faces in a much more efficient way, and the aisles work much better for movement through the parking lot, though not creating a through freeway. And the parking becomes an orchard so that you're parking beneath the shade of the trees. It's 225 spaces total, including the parallel parking on Torrey. So it's actually, even though you've gained all these trees and the impact of this landscape, you've not lost very many numbers of cars overall. Next. Now, that's sort of ripply over there. We've done some diagrams to show you, to help you conceive of all the ways this place might be used. It's important to imagine it on a day-to-day basis, where there's just a few people moving in and out. Maybe it's a school day, and people are moving in and out of the space, but you can imagine people clustered around the cafe on tables and chairs. And it could be a dozen people, it could be 4 dozen people or 5 dozen people. This shows 52 chairs around tables. Then you could imagine dinner for a special event at tables set in the north and south garden on either side of the community hall. Very special occasion. And this could be 150 people dining in these gardens. Or you can imagine dining under the stars, and Civic Plaza becomes an outdoor banquet space for some special event. And this could be hundreds of people sitting around tables, even 1,000 people sitting around tables beneath the stars. Festivals are another use that will enliven Civic Plaza. And it's important that it be programmed. It's important that it be thought of. It's as important as the community hall in terms of becoming a venue for your expression as a community. It becomes a theater or a platform for all the ways you want to use your civic place. So imagine a festival with tents lining within the central space. Or imagine a projection of a movie in the plaza and 500 chairs moved into the plaza for people to watch that. Or toward the library, maybe someone is giving a speech in front of the library. So these are different ways that the plaza can be used. Or you can imagine all of Torrey Avenue becoming a festival plaza, so that the whole district becomes a festival space, and Torrey is closed to traffic, and booths line Torrey Avenue. Special performances like Shakespeare in the Park happen within the plaza itself. You can imagine a connection then to the fields, and it becomes a place of special events every now and then that is this whole district within Cupertino. So multi-purpose, a high degree of flexibility, very appropriate for an intimate number of people, also very appropriate for special events, but most of all, very lively on a day-to-day basis so that people want to come, they want to go to the library, they want to get a cup of coffee, maybe they don't go to the library or City Hall at all, and they come here to have lunch and hang out in the plaza. And that's what this idea is for Cupertino.
I'll just conclude, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, by noting a couple of things. Would you go back to the last slide before? I wanted to point out that, of course, our original charge from you and from the community was to maintain this project within the adopted budget that you adopted last June. Just $22 million for the library and a total of $3.5 million for the community hall in the square. What you see before you is a concept that will fit within that budget. Kathy mentioned the library is 57,000 square feet. It's actually more like 54,000. The additional 3,000 comes in the program area that would be used by the library. They wouldn't use the whole community hall, of course, but that meeting area would be the same program that the library program contains. So for all intents and purposes, it's 54 plus 3. That doesn't include the cafe, which is probably 500 or 600 feet. There are two things which are not in that budget, that $25.5 million. The trees in the orchard. The parking lot is, but the trees are not. We felt it was important to master plan them, as Mary Margaret had described, so that at some point in the future we could add them if we wanted to, because it's an important amenity, but they are not included in the budget. The other thing that is not included is the paving that you see on Torrey Avenue. Again, that's something that would not be precluded by the project, could be done as an add-on or even as a later phase. An important piece, but it is not in the budget, and I wanted to be sure you knew that. The next update for you would be bringing back, if you approve of this concept today, would be bringing back a progress report on the schematic development, which would include such things as a color palette, materials, textures, details, finishes, that sort of thing, which you, of course, don't see here. That would be appropriate for the next phase. The schedule that we were on calls for a construction start sometime in the spring of 2003, roughly a little over a year from now, and the completion of the project and occupancy no later than October of 2004. That is very close to our original projections. We might even move in sooner, but in order to provide the library the necessary planning for their temporary dislocation during the construction, we needed to provide those dates. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'll conclude by saying this has been a long and difficult road, but it has been worth it. We think that what we have before you is something that we can recommend and feel good about recommending to you and to the community as something that will serve us for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Great job. Thank you very much. First, do we have any questions? Dolly, do you have any questions for staff?
I have a couple of basic questions on the layout of the library. Can we get that slide? Is it possible just to flip back to that? The children's area, et cetera, et cetera?
First floor layout.
First floor map and second floor map. If I recall the first floor map correctly, there were two sets of restrooms. One when you first enter the library and another over by the storyroom. It doesn't seem like enough for the amount of traffic that we have going in and out of that library and the amount of traffic that we'd hope to bring to the library, particularly with a cafe opening up to a civic plaza. Are there plans for more? I'm sure you probably have studies on how many restrooms are enough. I'm guessing, but
May I answer?
please.
This is very preliminary. Of course, we'll do all the necessary checking that is important to have. This is really a conceptual design, and we believe that we need more restrooms that are easy to have. Oops, was it off?
I think that's working.
It was.
Did you hear me? Oh, did everybody, should I say it again?
Yeah, roll again.
I'm sorry. I told Councilmember Sandoval that we're at a preliminary stage with the library still, and we haven't really done the detailed research about exactly how many fixtures we should have. It's very important that there be enough. Of course, we also have them in the community hall, so when there's a meeting going on that's library related, that will also be available.
Right.
The children have them because they need them, and this should be an adequate number for the kids, but we'll definitely, and their staff also has them down in their staff area, down in the lower left-hand corner. Those are staff restrooms, and we'll definitely be looking into all those details in the next phase.
Great.
It's very important, I agree.
Thank you. Can you speak to the environmentally friendly aspects that the library will hold in terms of photo cells? I see a lot of light coming in, and I've seen the drawings and the representations here, which I think is marvelous, because natural light, I think, is coming in from two different sides, both the courtyard and then from the outside. But what other environmentally friendly aspects have you drawn into this?
Well, we will be, again, that's kind of the next phase in a sense. We will be looking at many, many different kinds of strategies, including using, if we possibly can, recycled materials. In this, for example, we've completed a project in San Francisco which used a glass product that's made of old bottles, and it's a beautiful structural material. Low fly ash concrete. Certainly, if it's possible to use natural ventilation in this library, we will. We believe in it very strongly. My partner, Anthony Bernheim, is an expert, nationally known expert in issues of indoor air quality, for example, and is part of the U.S. Green Buildings Council. He speaks at conferences, and we have a policy in our office to be as energy conscious and sustainable in our agendas with buildings as possible. I think it's very important to all of us to be good occupiers of the planet. Great. And we'll be trying to use as many strategies as we can. Certainly daylighting is very important. One of the greatest sources of heat and also of energy in a building is lighting. And all these lights that are near the windows will be on timers so that or photocells so they don't turn on when they're not needed. And those kinds of strategies we will definitely use here.
Great. If I move to the community room, and I don't think I need the slide for that, but I noticed the floor, it wasn't fixed seating in the floor. That way you can have either set up as a meeting or for dinner, which is a great idea. On the dais, is there, is the stage area a short stage area? Can you make it bigger or cut part of it off, I guess is more my question. Can you drop down a screen if you wanted to show movie or slides in there similar to what we have here?
Yes, all those things, all of those things, yes.
Great.
So
Well,
it's as flexible a space as the floor space would be.
Okay. Thanks, and congratulations, by the way, too. I know the commission and the foundation and you folks and staff have been working hard. I think it's a beautiful project, and I reviewed some of those bigger drawings in the back, and just think it's great. Thank you.
Ready to go?
Should I ask a few questions?
Sure.
Just to follow up.
Sure.
Can you hear me? So what we're seeing is pretty much to scale. Is the group study room, the representation in the group study room, is that to scale? Is that like 9 tables in there, roughly speaking?
I guess that's correct. That's, again, I want to emphasize what Kathy said. This is a conceptual drawing.
Sure.
It pretty much shows you where everything goes, but there's a great deal of work left to be done in the details of how that comes together. But generally speaking, that's the general concept, yes.
Good. I think that's, looks like it's bigger than what was there before, and I think that's, so I want to acknowledge that, and I think that that's a good direction to go. I think there's quite a bit of need for group study space. Going to the community hall, the community hall inside, that space, just how would that space compare in size with this room? Can you give us a sense of that?
Well, this room is only 2/3 of this, its regular real size.
Right.
Because that's a movable
Right,
partition.
right.
It's slightly smaller, but it's actually very, very different in character.
Okay.
As you can see in this drawing. The idea of this is that it's a very, it's an ascendant space. It's a celebratory space. It's, I want to reiterate what Ralph said about its flexibility. It will have all the bells and whistles that it needs to from an audiovisual standpoint, which most of these don't have. It's slightly, if it's slightly smaller, it also has a greater open feeling. You can see by looking at this drawing, for example, the way it extends itself to the outdoors. It's not really the same thing as a series of windows like we have in this room, but a much more open indoor-outdoor space, which also can be closed for presentations like this.
Right. So when you say that it's slightly smaller than this room, you mean the room when it's extended?
When it's open, yes. The room, when it's open, is about 3,000 square feet when it's fully open. We're sitting in 2,000 square feet. So the new room is a little over 2,400 in its main space, not counting the platform and not counting the lobby. It's about 1,000 square feet.
And how does the size of this room compare with the Cupertino room in the Quinlan Center?
When the Cupertino room is extended out, as you know, it has space that goes under the roof and all that. That room, I think, was what, 36? 34? 4,000. Okay, when it's all extended, it's 4,000. So this would be roughly 2/3 of the size of that.
Okay. Good. In this community building, right now in our library, present library, the community room there is very well used, as we all know. How would that need be met and replicated and maybe even enhanced?
We and the library staff believe that this room will definitely enhance what you have now. And it meets the actual program that was developed early on. It's quite large for that program, and it will certainly be available to the library. When we count the square footage, we only counted, this building is actually closer to 6,000 square feet, but we only counted the square footage that the library would use if it were attached to the library. So that's about 3,000 square feet.
Right. I saw in the schematic that there's a smaller conference room there. What's the size of that conference room? Lower left, yeah. Is that, how many
Around
people would that
200 square
accommodate
feet?
for us?
About 200 square feet.
Excuse me?
Around 200 square feet.
200, and how many people would that comfortably?
Very comfortably 20 plus.
Okay,
You usually figure 10 square feet per person
Right.
for something like that.
right. My question is that the library, the community room there, even though it can accommodate a lot of people down there actually, but it comfortably accommodate about 40 people easily. And I wonder if there are ways to make this larger area so that it's more flexible space, such that you can have actually smaller rooms rather than using the whole space. Let's say you have more than 20 people, you have 40 people, but the whole space, would it be too big for 40 people? Is there possibilities of partitions or that type of thing?
Well,
for
I
smaller
think that
space?
those are less desirable because one of the problems with what we call flexibility is that you end up with very nondescript spaces, which are not good for anything really. It's a series of compromises. What I think is interesting about this particular building is it could be used lots of ways. For example, the lobby itself could become a smaller meeting room. When the community hall is not being used, that lobby can be used as its own room. The conference room is about 200 square feet, but the dais, or the platform itself, is another space that could be used for meetings, and it again is slightly larger, probably 400 square feet. So you begin to get a kind of a series of sizes of spaces within this building that can be used without compromising its nobility in a sense, or its specialness.
I understand. Yeah, if we program for those spaces to be used, that would be very good, like the lobby or those. That would be very good. My final question has to do with the articulation with the town center redevelopment. If that project gets going and somehow we have that town center lane, how would it feel, and assuming that it is possible to drive from De Anza towards the library and community center down that lane, how would it feel driving down there and looking at how would the orientation and what consideration have been given to that?
I think that really drove much of the design of the plaza, because it was important to us that you had this sense of the relationship of Town Center Lane to the community hall. So really, the community hall is the end of that view. The plaza is the foreground, and you're looking through the heritage oaks that are part of Town Center Lane, but this is looking down, and you can see the kind of central orientation. You'll see the community hall, but you'll see the activity and the life of the plaza in front of that. So it isn't just a sterile view like a view of the Washington Monument. It has that presence, it has that elegance, it has that stateliness, but it also is full of the life of this community.
Thank you.
Just want to compliment staff and consultant for a job well done. And I'm also pleased to learn that the project is going to be constructed on time and within budget. Speaking of budget, I just want to find out whether the $22 million, does it include furniture?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so it will be a turnkey except paving and some landscape architect.
Well, that would be the orchard in the back, and, between now and the time we develop it, maybe a portion of that is an ad alternate to the bid. The bidding climate's good, we might be able to include it. We certainly wanted to include it in the master plan because we think it's an integral part of the whole.
Okay. I want to ask a question regarding parking. You indicated there's a 225 parking stalls. How many parking stalls are available at the present time?
Currently, there's 227, and there are something like 50-plus parallel parking over the length of Torrey. So if you combine those two, basically what will end up happening is it'll be maybe 25 spaces left. We're going to try to restrict parking along the frontage of the plaza. But as you may recall, during the discussions early on with the Hunter Storm project, one of the considerations was to provide an additional 180 spaces across the street somewhere in that project, which would, of course, be very adequate for any current or future use. And we're including that in our understanding of the parking.
So across the street will be more or less like overflow type of parking?
Well, that, or we might dedicate that to City Hall parking and say, employees and the fleet, City Hall that now occupies the space behind the building could park there and then leave this space open for community hall and library parking, which would make more sense.
I think it's important that we should have ample parking spaces in view of the fact that we're adding another amenity such as the community hall in the complex. Could you comment on the ADA? Where are the elevators now? Where is the access ramp for ADA compliance?
Well, we as Councilmember Sandoval was asking about the restrooms, basically, right now, the location of the elevator is quite near the lobby. This is the public elevator. There's actually a second elevator for the staff. But the building will be 100% ADA compliant, and it's a federal law. And I think that's very appropriate because, again, the idea of making this accessible and welcoming to everybody, regardless of whether they see well or hear well or are disabled in some other way, it's very important that everyone have completely free access to this.
I wanted to add, too, when you raise that plaza up to one level, it becomes extremely friendly to disabled persons. Can get anywhere on the plaza, whereas now, of course, you can't get down there very easily.
Okay. My next question is that what are the efforts you are taking for energy conservation? Would there be any motion detect or switch it off and off type of a device to conserve energy?
All those things. I think you heard Kathy's response to Councilmember Sandoval. That is a huge consideration for us. We want to maximize our savings. We've done a number of things as a city to do that, and we certainly would take advantage of that here.
Okay. My last question is that could you go back to the community hall slide, please? Okay. The conference room and the bottom corner there is next to the mechanical room. Will that have a lot of insulations for any noises because you will have compressors, air conditioning units?
Yes, of course it would. There is one thing that I should point out is one of the advantages here is that in the community hall, we will be piping in from the chillers and the plant that's in the library. So we won't have a second plant here. We'll have, air conditioning units and that sort of thing, but we will draw the chilling and so forth off the library building. So that's why it doesn't need to be so big.
So big, I see. In the lobby, going into the main room here, you have 2 doors, and then right in between you have a big wall. Is there any architecture design or any decoration in that wall right there?
Well, yes, it's actually meant to be a glass wall.
Glass wall.
So you can see in, so there's a sense of openness again from the community hall itself to the plaza. Basically, I think there would probably also be some way of closing it off visually.
I see.
But the idea, I think it shows in this that you can actually see, this is the wall that you're talking about, and the door is at one end, and here's the other door. So actually, right in this drawing, you're looking through that to the lobby, through the arcade, which is just a little bit noticeable, and then out to the outdoors beyond. So the idea is to make it really open, so no one feels excluded. Everybody's welcome. It's the seat of government in America that is meant to be very, very open. It's also it's not really the seat of government, your city hall is, but this is a civic room for civic events as well as fun events and formal events of all kinds.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. As you know, Michael Chang and I have co-chaired this committee from the very beginning, so we've been involved in a lot of the things that we've worked through, and I'm absolutely delighted to see what you have brought forth to us this time, because it's been a long, tedious, emotional journey we've all gone on, all of us in this room, and this is really the first time I'm able to just take a deep breath and go, my goodness, we finally are getting all of those things together that we felt strongly about, that the community felt strongly about, and I'm seeing them all here. So I'm just going to kind of highlight a few of them, and in my mind there's one thing that I'd like to see you consider adding. And since we're taping this and it's going to be played over and over and over and over and over again on TV so we can continue to educate the community, I want to emphasize something you've mentioned before. This is really a conceptual plan. So if those people are wondering, why are we talking so much about the plaza and the plants and the community room and not where the stacks are, or how you get in and out of the interior of the library, that's because that is the next phase, and that will be gone over in great detail with our librarians and our technical people and the rest of us. So basically today, that's where it sits, what the building's beginning to look like, how the plaza fits into it, all of those things. And those were critically important to us. There's a number of things I'm very pleased with. We asked you when we interviewed you to give us a green building, to look very closely at light and how you bring that in to our library, energy conservation, to please bring the outside in and the inside out, to encourage people to come, to live there, to study there, to be together. And I really believe you've done all of those things. I am a great believer in landscape architecture and how that enhances building, design, and I am absolutely delighted, Mary Margaret, with what you have done here. I love the orchard feel that is the history of this valley, and I think you've done something wonderfully creative. I absolutely hate surface parking, and it's ugly and it's a waste of land use. I just think the creative way you've created an orchard in the parking lot, and we will find the money to do that. I can look at 3 faces out there, myself included, that we'll get the money to do those trees so they can be done right from the very beginning, because that really does add a lot. I like the fact that it has a comfortable natural feel that goes with this community. At the same time, the building is very, very sophisticated, and that is also part of who we are. I was concerned about a very modern building next to our city hall, which doesn't have that kind of architecture, and I think that you've done an admirable job of blending all those things together, making it work very well. I wasn't sure I'd like the separate community hall, to be honest with you, when you first started talking about that. It was a hard sell for me, and I like it very much. And I think the reason I like it is not only the multiple use for it, which we desperately need in this community. The librarians can use it to do story times, all kinds of creative things. Friends of the library can use it. City Hall can use it. The community can be using it. It can be broken into all kinds of different ways. I love the two different outdoor patios where you can extend the seating, or a buffet, or any way you want to. With our wonderful weather here, it's a shame that we do not take advantage of that, and I believe both the library building and the community hall extends the space and the use and the flexibility by celebrating the fact that this is an indoor community, and I think you've done an exceptional job of that. I very much like the cafe, and I know the librarians probably don't, but I think that all of us in the community want a little place like that, and I think you've worked it very, very well into the building, and I think it will function extremely well, and I think it will add something we all want, which is to encourage people to hang out, to be there, to make it convenient and comfortable for them. I absolutely love all of the glass that you have in the buildings, both of them. I just think that's a very, very important part of your design. And the inner courtyard for the library is my very favorite of the whole thing. I love the way you can look through and see to the Redwood Grove, and that you can be inside the library and still be outside, and vice versa. I think that is going to be one of the things that makes our library unique and defines it. I just was on a vacation in Phoenix, and they have an absolutely gorgeous new library, and I'm going to hand you, none of you will be surprised to hear this, they have a specified teen area in their library that's like state of the art, and I got all the literature on this. I can pass it on to all of you. We don't have the space to do what they did, but the whole idea of it and everything is very unique, and I actually spent some of my vacation going through the library. And there are just certain things about libraries that define them, and I believe that part of ours is going to be defined by that wonderful courtyard and the fact that everywhere you look, you're going to see trees and the outdoors, and celebrate the agricultural history of this community, as well as our wonderful technology. I was delighted to see Apple computers in your renderings. I did notice that. And since Apple has been on board with this library, and I've been working with them from the beginning to have a wonderful way for them to participate, I was delighted. Eleonora, be sure to tell them that. I love the fountains. I'm a great believer in fountains. I think the feng shui of fountains is important. I think the serenity of fountains is important. I think the playfulness. I love the fountains that you have incorporated. If there's any way we can do more, I would even do more. I think it'd be nice to have a fountain in the inner courtyard some way. You know, some kind of running water. It's just peaceful. It's got so many elements that make it positive, and it works well with the design, so I was delighted to see that. I like the way you've looked at the different setups. We are very poor in our community for places for us to have events. We all know that. This beautiful building in this room was one response to that. I'm delighted to see that within the library, out in the plaza, and within the community hall, you have listened to what we have said and listened to our staff, and have designed a place where we can have festivals, where we can bring our farmers market, where we can have musical events, where we can have children's artwork, where we can have weddings, bar mitzvahs, just about anything you would want would work in this design, and we desperately need that and want that, and all of us up on council feel very strongly about it, and I think you've listened very well to that. I particularly like the diversity of hard surfaces in the courtyard area, and the way you have made that very unique. If you could show the overall outside picture. I like the way you've defined those and changed them from some lawn to crushed granite and different ways to look at that. I think that not only works well for the varied uses, but the overall beauty of the center and wanting to be there is I think, enhanced. I like all of the trees with the benches under them. I think that's very, very important for our community. Anywhere you go in this community, you see that. You see our seniors walking along and wanting to stop and rest. You see our kids playing. We see people rollerblading. There's people wandering. And I think if you give them a place to sit and you give them a shady place to sit, then they want to come back, and it works. So I'm absolutely delighted to see you work that into everywhere it is. The one thing that I would like to see you consider is do you call that the colonnade? Is that what you're calling that? The colonnade area that goes along the front aspect of the library and then across from the library to City Hall. And I know you haven't defined what that surface is going to be yet, what it looks like, but I would very much, the one thing that's missing for me is I would like to see the hard surface to hard surface there softened up with pots, some kind of a potted vine or something along the colonnade that grows up with lighting on it at night. And I already talked to Dave about that. It's the one thing when I see it that's missing for me is that, it's too bold, and I think with all the rest of the foliage, I would like to see you consider something like that there. The other thing that's missing for me, and perhaps this will happen inside the library as well, is I would like to see a venue for some kind of artwork that our local residents, especially the children, do, whether it's murals somewhere or it's a rotating facility to rotate artwork or something. That's a big part of who we are, and I think in this kind of community gathering it's really nice to have some place like that that will work. And so I would ask you, those were really only the two things that when I looked at it, that I saw missing that I'd like to see. And as I looked down my list, I think I've pretty much have hit on everything that I wrote about. I really am very, very, very pleased and excited, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you on this project as we continue to define all the specific aspects of it.
Wow. Well, I'm not going to repeat, but I'll say that I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's very exciting. I think you've done a great job and an amazing amount of progress since we last saw the project, so I'm very happy with that. I guess my first reaction is it's nice to see a library layout that isn't all corners, because when I think of our current library, it's all corners. And I don't know how anybody gets anything done given all the corners that we have. I guess if you start with an octagon, you expect some corners, but it's just nice to see open space in the library. It just seems like we can be so much more efficient, get so much more done when it comes down to the business of running the library. So I think ultimately that's going to be very, very important, even though we're more focused maybe on the beauty and the community aspects of the project. I think the fact that the library is going to work well will be very, very important to people too. To that point, I think there's still some controversy about the drive-through drop-off, but I think it's vital, because I think having people drive in, park their car, get out, dump off their books, get in their car and drive away consumes parking spaces. It's bad for air pollution. It's not friendly to our users, and it's just, so I think we need to solve that issue, and I know there are some challenges with that, but I think we should work hard at making it so we can have the drive-through drop-off. I think everybody will love it when it's in place, so I think that should be done. Now, let's see, on the group study area, I would ask you to run things here by the teen commission and maybe some other teenagers, because I'm in the process of trying to decode why they think that we don't like them much, and one of the hot spots for them was the library, which it's sort of an impression that when they walk in the library that they're not welcomed, which might be because they want to be noisy or something. And I heard Vice Mayor Chang talk about the importance of having a large group study area. I'd like to run some of that by those teens to see if they want multiple small ones or something, because I think they want to be a little noisier than the average person. Now, one thing that's wonderful is that we'll have the courtyard where they can probably cut a little looser than the average library patron. But in any case, I think talking it over with them or listening to them would be a good idea, because they don't feel welcome right now in the library. The pre-function area, I want to echo what Sandy said. We really need spaces in Cupertino. And so if there is a way to make sure that the pre-function area can be gracefully combined with the main function area of the community room, it would definitely make that a lot useful for a lot more things that we have a very difficult time accommodating today. All you had to do was go to last night's council meeting and see people stand up for 3 hours waiting for their chance to speak. So if whatever can be done to make that a little more flexible so that people can feel incorporated. Now maybe that's just AV equipment. I mean, maybe it's just a sound system so they can sit out there. You know, I remember my church when I was growing up had a place where you put the little kids that they could see but we couldn't be heard. Maybe, you know, I don't know, whatever you think. Next, I love this space, and as Sandy said, I think the mixture of textures is going to make it very special, and to me, reminiscent of some spaces in Europe that I've been to, some places in France where they use a lot of mixture of texture like that, and it's a very subtle design thing, but I think very valuable. This is becoming a bit of a parks and recreation space, and so I would hope that somebody experienced in the user side of parks and recreation gets involved with ideas. And further to that, I guess, I've always been on the case here of the community integration aspect of this project, and I'd ask that we get kind of a sort of an urban planning audit, somebody completely different from the urban planning world or the placemaking world that says that in their opinion, people will come. That's my big paranoia. We'll build this all, and all those people, those little white people there won't materialize. And it'll look splendid. I don't have the talent to figure out what draws people and what makes empty spaces. I've read something about it, but I don't trust that I've learned. So I guess I'd like somebody completely independent that's just into spaces and placemaking to come in and give an independent opinion, hopefully constructively. And again, in terms of the parks and recreation aspect of it, I don't know if we have enough activity here, things to draw people. We have the cafe, and it seems to be the central thing, central attraction for people, of course, besides the library. So I don't know if we want to program more things there. I don't know if we want chess tables there, for people to sit at, or, a bocce ball court under one of these strings of trees, or just something else to give it some interest and some draw, and something for the people that are going to come here to watch. So even not so much that they may not participate, but it'll make it more an interesting space. Let's see. The lighting, it strikes me that if all of our grand plans come to pass and the town center development happens, and you can actually see down here, maybe in an occluded vision all the way from De Anza Boulevard, we would probably like to have some kind of low level of light here, maybe late into the night, maybe till midnight or something, to give more of a sense of place for the whole community. But to do that, I think you're going to need to design it so we don't attack our neighbors across the creek. So I think it needs to be taken into account that we would like some light shining out to the business area, but not to the residents. And it's probably true on the library and on the community building that you want to, it would just be nice to have sort of a glow there during the night. But if we don't do it right, we'll have to shut them off because we'll wake up the neighbors. Can't do that. I think that's it. I think it's great. I love it. I think it's going to be an efficient, good library and something for us to work with as a center for our town, which we really need. People need to feel like there's a place to go, and a lot of that the community is going to pitch in and make that happen. You know, we will have to put festivals here and encourage people to put festivals here. Maybe we do want Rotary meetings or whatever, you know, things that'll draw people here so that we get in the habit of spending time in this space. Right now, we are definitely out of that habit. That grassy area is empty. So we'll need to do some programming of this too, I think, to make it an active place. So I think that's it. If any one thing, I think getting the teens to think about what makes this good for young people. I think it's just a little phase we need to go through here to ask ourselves those questions. So thanks very much. I think it's great. Okay. Anybody want a second rebuttal or anything like that? No? All right, good. I didn't receive any cards. Were any cards handed up? Does anybody wish to speak from the audience? Do we have a mic? There's a microphone there for you. Why don't you give us your name and address?
Okay.
We'll go paperless here tonight.
Where's the police? I guess two things. One is the...
Did you forget your name and address, Leslie?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can probably do it.
I know. Leslie Burnell, Hollyoak Drive, Cupertino. Is the community building planned to be built at the same time as this library? And I think I think it's wonderful. From the time 3 years ago to here, I do have a couple of concerns. One is I don't really believe that the community center can be 100% belong to the library, which means in essence that we now have a 54,000 square foot library. What concerns me is that 2-3 years ago, the first comments I heard, and I can't answer now, but the library people were talking about they needed 67,000 square feet. This is a very substantial reduction, and they're the only ones that can answer the question as to whether the library immediately will be jammed and not, you know, and we start out as a library. This is a whole wonderful concept. So are we immediately going to then have to have expansion for the library? That's my set question. The other one is, and that's for this was a library for people that work there, they need it, and they're the ones that really need the library. The second is that the City Hall, and people are jammed like sardines. We've added Rancho, Oak Center, and Garden Gate, which means we need more expansion for the people. I believe we need to look at something. Are we going to use the community center for your council meetings so that now the people can expand? And those are just my two concepts, that we need to be treating the people that are running the library, that it is their building, and how are they going to operate it? And then the other is the council people, like, you know, they need more space. I've been down there. Those are my basic comments. But overall, I think it's an excellent concept, working very well. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Leslie. Ralph, do you want to respond? No is a fine answer.
Farnsworth, speak to that.
Okay.
I wanted to speak anyway. Let me just briefly introduce our audience to the Santa Clara County Library System. which confuses people very often. There are actually two governmental players in the Cupertino Library, and one you know well is in front of you, is the city of Cupertino. But the library itself is operated by the Santa Clara County Library System, which provides the staff, maintains the building, provides the personal computers, the networks to support those, pays the utilities, buys the materials, the books and other materials, and manages to do all of that in a very tight budget. You could ask Richard about what we go through on our budgets. So the reason that it sometimes gets difficult is when you have two organizations. One political organization is hard enough. When you bring two players into it, it gets even more difficult, particularly for the architects, I'm sure, who sometimes feel like they're being squeezed between a rock and a hard place. We're delighted as the county library and as a Cupertino resident that the city has come forward with $22 million, which is just an extraordinary commitment on their part for a public library. However, we also know that he who has the gold makes the rules. So we do have at least one significant concern that I asked the architects to address, and maybe they could bring that up. Do you want to bring that up? You want me to bring it up? Yeah. It's just the shape of the courtyard. So don't think that that's the final answer on the shape of the courtyard. We may have to return to that because of our need to keep the staffing down. Sometimes we have to work towards efficiencies. In terms of the size, of course, all of us, I think all of us here wanted a bigger library. But libraries are real expensive buildings, and they take a lot of money per square foot to build. And we're satisfied that the program that we've come up for a 54,000 square foot building is as good as it can be. We may not have a whole lot of expansion room in the new library, but it will be about a square foot per capita, which is a good standard, and most of the cities that are building new libraries in this county are going to about that same standard. So the librarians support it.
I had a question for you on that, Ralph. We've talked about it before, but I don't know if you've ever assigned a number to sort of the effective space of the current library. There's some efficiency loss and whatnot, but do you have a number that you use for?
Yes, the current library is about 37,000 square feet. And we think that if you apply just standard good practices and were to rebuild that building at 37,000 square feet with the technology and the architecture that we are providing in this building, you'd achieve right off the bat anywhere from a 30 to 40% increase in efficiency without adding 1 square foot. We've tested that against the program, and that seems to be real. When you add the number of square foot that we're putting into this building, and I do count the 3,000 square feet in the community hall because that will be readily available to the library for its use. It will not be occupied all the time by city uses, and so it's a very valuable space to them. We think that increases the capacity of this library to operate by a substantial margin.
So let me just guess from your numbers. Would you say something like 25,000 square feet is the effective size of the current library, or
something like that? Yes.
Okay.
Ralph, I have a question for you. If we are going to expand the library, okay, in future years, where will be the direction? Would it be going that way, further towards the community hall?
I couldn't even speculate. We own the whole block, and we'll probably always own the whole block. I hope we always own it. There are ways to expand from this building if you wanted to, but quite frankly, Councilmember Kwok, we really haven't looked at that as an important aspect of this project. What we tried to do was provide a complete project and Civic Center. There's plenty of land next to it, but how that would be configured, we don't know. We've tried to design a complete project, and we have the Redwood Grove to one side, you have Torrey Avenue on the other, the plaza on this side. That would take some real study, and I would not want to speculate here today on that.
I'd just like to add one other thing to this. And I think that I believe that libraries will always be wonderful places for books, but we know that the digital world is coming. It's here to some extent, and in thinking about libraries today, we're not really sure they're going to need to grow to accommodate more information. To design this building so that it can expand is a good idea, but it may be able to expand within its square footage by just simply digitization and miniaturization, access to connections, for example, digital connections to Stanford University or to some of the other resources around the Bay Area, so that you end up really not having to expand the building to expand the collection. And that's really the most that anybody can predict, is that we really don't know. But I think that that's definitely a possibility.
Can I also ask a question? Oh, are you done?
Did you want to put in?
No, just to follow up, I mean, just to personalize this, when I was a kid, I had a huge bookcase with all the encyclopedias and reference books. My two sons have it on one CD. And, you know, that's pretty common. And I think that what Kathy is saying, I think we can look to the future with some of that.
Well, I guess my question has been partially answered, and I guess we've gone back and forth on the space issue, just simply because we don't want to, we just want to err on the safe side on that and just be perfectly sure about that. And so I think that our present library is about 27,000 square feet, and going to 54 is 37. Going to 54,000 is a significant increase, even though it's less than what was projected by by our consultant. Can you try to what's the right word? I just had that word, but can you try to talk about other indicators of why this would be adequate for our needs besides the 1 square foot per capita guide rule of thumb? That rule of thumb, I think, is a good one, but it's very general. And the fact that our residents here, our library, I think, is known for much higher usage than other communities. It's probably higher by quite a bit. And I'm sure that you can justify it in other ways. I just need to be calmed down a little bit more. Maybe if you can talk in terms of the library collection. Right now, the library collection, 1/3 of the library collection has always to be out. Well, with the new library, maybe that's an okay system. Or would they all be in? How much expansion space? Or maybe if people say that in Sundays when we go to our libraries here, it's very packed. Well, what would it physically feel like or look like in the new library? And as we know that when you have a great facilities, if it's successful, it draws more people. And what we know of the senior center, I think our membership used to be like 800 or something like that. Now it's 2,000 and it's still growing. So I'd rather, err on the safe side and have you talk more about that at this point.
Let me take a shot at that. We have, with 37,000 inefficient square feet, the best library in the country. So I feel pretty comfortable that by expanding that substantially and making the use of that space more efficient, I mean, how good do you want to be? We're certainly going to be an outstanding library, and I think an example that people will look at around the country. In addition to that, in terms of the collection, remember that our library in Cupertino is part of a much larger system that has a very large number of materials and has access outside of its own system to practically any piece of information you want anywhere in the world. So the availability of information in the new library, indeed in the current library, far outstrips the square footage of the building that we currently occupy. The building we will occupy will be larger and it'll be far more efficient. So I don't think that need be a concern. At some point, I suppose if people come in larger and larger numbers, just the physical presence of human beings in the space could be a problem. I don't think that you're going to hit that level. Again, there is no upper limit. If you were to ask people who are supporters of library, there is no upper limit to how large the building could be. So there is some practical limitation. One of those practical limitations happens to be money. And so I think what you have to compare is not what would be optimal and perfect in a perfect world. The question is, how much better can we make what we currently have? And the answer to that is substantially better.
One other point that when we think about this, a space that's really part of the library that we don't count as the square footage is the courtyard. And I think Councilmember James was very articulate about that space. I imagine that most of the year it will be used every single day, except when it's raining and pouring or very cold. You can do that here. It's about 4,000 square feet. So in terms of, it's kind of, I think it will take the place in some ways of the old-fashioned reading room that you used to see in the history of libraries. And it will be a place which people use, and it's an outdoor room, as Mary Margaret calls, in a way, the big civic courtyard as well. And it's a space that you don't now have. I think it will tremendously add to the capacity of this library for people.
Thank you.
And I would also point out that the 37,000 square feet includes about 1,500 square feet of meeting room, which is not used for anything but meetings. Now you have this 3,000 square feet available in both the lobby section and the meeting room on top of the 54,000 square feet, and of course almost 4,000 square feet in the courtyard as well. So I think that we have maximized the city's investment into this project with the most efficient, the greatest use project that we can have. That has been our watchword all along. And for what we can afford to put into it, I think we have absolutely the best building and the best result that we could possibly get.
If I could just add to that, you know, being in from the very beginning, one of the things that the library community, the users, the staff, everybody's talked about with our current library from the very beginning is whoever designed that library, you know, the way it was designed in its circular fashion, it is the most inefficient building for a library that I think most of us have ever been associated with. So to compare the square footage of a building, which we have spent years talking about is inefficient, it's poor design for the staff as well as for the user, and then compare that with a brand new design that incorporates all of the current knowledge we have about library sciences and library uses to the maximum efficiency, is really comparing apples and oranges, and I think we do a great disservice to continue to do it that way. And I just want to caution everybody that it's not really fair. You know, we can't, on the one hand, have said that's a terrible building, it's horribly inefficient, there's wasted space, the librarians hate it, we still have the best library in the country, they've done a wonderful job with it, and compare that square footage to the square footage of the current one without taking into consideration it's a totally different animal. I think we do a disservice to the whole process, and I'd like to just caution everybody to that point.
One more space detail, Ralph. Just what are the prospects of preserving a basement? We talked about it briefly. There's a basement now.
Yes, there is.
So the
Yes.
question is, are we going to fill that hole up, or?
Well, from an engineering standpoint, the prospects are very good. However, as usable space for the library, it really isn't. It's a dark, dank space that is really not much good for anything but storage.
That's our current wonderful community room. How can you call it that?
Yeah, it is.
That's where half our books are.
But we are, without giving a finite answer, we are looking at the basement space to see, I mean, if we can use it, we want to. It's probably not good program space for the library. And I've talked to Julie and Marianne both about this, and I agree with them. I don't think it is. But it provides an opportunity for some storage space that would be adequate. It also provides a place for the mechanical and electrical plant to get it underground, and out of the building. So it does have possibilities, and I can assure you that that is a very high priority for us to look at during the design development phase.
Okay, good. I've got a couple of cards now. So Kathy Stakey, you want to come up and talk to us?
Thank you. I'm Kathy Stakey. I'm a member of the Library Commission, also a Cupertino resident. And I heed your warning, Sandy, about the space, but I still have to bring it up. I'm concerned because at our last public meeting, the number that was quoted was 55,000 square feet. Now, this evening, it's 54,000. I'm hoping that it's not reduced again at some future meeting. And I understood Mr. Burnell's point was the librarians know if that's adequate, and so I trust that they will press hard on you if that is not adequate for them. In keeping with my concerns about the space, is the cafe within the 54,000 square feet? Because that's another 600.
Got that on tape.
No, it is not. It's
It is not.
500-600 feet. We're not sure exactly,
Okay.
but we have not calculated that as part of the library program.
Okay. One other point on the cafe, I'm assuming that that will be staffed by the city and those expenses will not be borne out of the library budget.
It's not the library, but we would probably, typically what you do with that space is put out an RFP, franchise it out, and let an operator come in and build
Fabulous.
it out.
Okay. And then my third question would be, I think from the very beginning, we had concerns about designing the building so that it could be, if we need to increase size of the building, that could be done. Is that being considered in the construction of the building?
No, not really, not at this point. We're designing a complete building, and any expansion of this building in the future, however that's accomplished, you would have to accommodate it from one side of the building if you wanted to make a contiguous building. It could be done, but we're not designing it with breakaway walls or anything like that that would go to it.
Okay. Let me rephrase it. Is there consideration being given in the design of the building to add additional space? No.
No,
Okay.
not to this building, no.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have one more card from Yufen Wu. Well, at least I know it's Diana.
That's my official name, yes. Yufen Wu also goes by Diana Wu. I live at 10445 Imperial Avenue. Today I would like to represent myself as a private citizen. I do have two questions. First is the cafe in the library. In fact, I'm a professional librarian at San Jose State University. Eating and drinking, actually, it's a good idea to put the cafe in a library because it's a big demand. You know, it's very difficult to police for no food, no drink in a library. It's a trend to move into that direction as long as, we trust our patron who can obey the law. Especially, in our library, in our community, teens are a really active group using our library, and it's almost impossible to prohibit them from bringing food or drinking into the library. And if they do need to get some, refreshment during their study, I think that provide adequate place for them. However, I think we do need to set up specific rules and policy, make sure they follow our rules and policy. We do provide adequate space for them, and if they follow, we will continue to support them. That's my concern. And my second question is, I'd like to comment is whether a bigger library is necessary because we are moving to the digital age. As a librarian, if you heard I said I work at San Jose State, you probably heard that. Or if you pass downtown San Jose these days, you probably see a humongous building under construction at 4th Street and San Bernardo. So I can tell you why we are building such a humongous building. It would have about 474,000 square foot. And that translates to 12-acre spaces, okay? So, part of my job as a librarian, we do teach students how to use library, how to do research efficiently. Every semester I teach many classes. This semester I reach at least 400 students. And my area is in marketing and MBAs. And I survey almost every time when I started a before I started class, I said, well, we do collect lots of electronic books. So far, we have about 2,000 in our collection. And there are more altogether, about 5,000 in the consortium, because San Jose State, it's a campus of CSU system. So altogether, actually, we have more in the collection. You can see most of business major students, they prefer to do everything electronically because they're looking for the most current information they can get. But before I start my class, I surveyed them. I said, we do have lots of electronic books. How many of you would bring your laptop when you go to Waikiki Beach and read a book from your laptop? There's nobody raised a hand. So I can tell you from my perspective as a profession, I don't believe digital is going to replace the books, okay? So space, I think it's a big issue. We have to look at it if we have room for expansion. Cupertino Library is a very small, physically, it's a very small building. But the circulation is the highest among the county system. That translates to about 521, or maybe even more now, items of circulation every hour. It almost set a record. I haven't seen any number higher than that. So, and we have lots of people coming to the community. I see parents with kids with 2 big tall bags of books. So we do have to put into consideration, space is always an issue, and I understand that, the sky may be the limit. We wish we could have as much as we could, but, I think we do need to leave room for expansion. I just went to a workshop last weekend, and the workshop took place at Redwood City Library, Public Library, and it's a relative new library, and one person from a library commented, says that the second year when the new renovated library was opened, the circulation was already double. Okay, so that's something I'd like to bring to your attention. I think we need to keep in mind space isn't the issue, and if that's 54 is that what we are proposing, we need to leave room for expansion, not the next 2 or 3 years, at least 10 or 15 years later. We need to have room for expansion at least for that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana, or you, Fen. Anybody else who wishes to speak out there in the audience?
There was just one thing both
Ralph.
Ms. Stakey and Ms. Wu raised about the cafe. And the cafe is only exited to the outside, not into the library. We advocated having an entrance into the library as well as outside, like you see in some bookstores that have a cafe. We were raising that and were spoken to very sharply by the library staff, who overruled us instantly, and we gave up very fast on that one. So it does not connect to the library, so those concerns are taken care of.
Richard, it's been great to hear the presentation, and again, thank you for your hard work. Where can people go who are watching this either on the webcast or on their VCRs and TVs? Where can they go to check out this 3-dimensional plan? Is this going to be at City Hall, Ralph, or?
Yes,
or how
thank
can they
you
do that?
very much for raising that question. I probably should have put that in the end of my presentation. What we plan to do from tonight on is create, with all of this material, a traveling exhibit, and starting with the library and putting the model, the drawings you see, the renderings, and some of the floor plans, and label them with explanations, and we will do that in at least 2 languages so that we have people who can observe them and see them, and a place to go if they want more information. We'll start with the library. When we finish the work in City Hall, we'll put it there, and then maybe to the Quinlan Center and to the Senior Center and so on. And we'll continue that effort. Rick Kitson has, and the Channel 26 crew have done a superb job of getting this information on the website, and we're going to have this slideshow available to go on the site as well. Your suggestion to the Teen Commission is one that had also occurred to us. We had made a brief presentation to the Parks and Rec Commission at their request, but I think we'll probably do some more of that over the next few months as the project develops.
Now, I'll challenge our architects maybe a little bit, but one of the things that has grabbed our imaginations in the past has been these computer simulations of kind of walking through the project. So if you have that capability, we'd love to see it, because we've been excited by it.
We can buy that capability. It is extremely expensive. It is, we thought about that. I raised it.
Well,
it
the
is a
Penn
very
brothers, who are
expensive.
two guys.
Yeah, I know, but
Okay,
never mind. It is, we've done it there. We can buy that technology, and it's wonderful. I agree with it. It's just fabulous, but it is very, very expensive. We'll take another look at it.
No, no, I don't want to cut another square foot out of the library to buy it. Okay, I've been asked by Vice Mayor Chang if we could have some closing remarks. I think that's appropriate. So why don't we go in reverse order? Sandra, why don't you start us on some closing remarks?
You know, I've actually said a lot in my critique and comments, and so I don't think I really have anything to add to that. As I said before, I'm extremely pleased with the amount of progress that's been made from the last time we talked about this, and I look forward to continuing working with you, and then the next phase, getting inside the building and working on the interior and the places, and I will pass that information on to you that I got from the Phoenix Library. I think that we're doing wonderful work. I'm very excited about it, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And just to caution everybody, you know, we do have a budget of, you know, we're pushing that $22 million. We all know that that's a push for us, and so we can build the library we can afford to build. And I think we should be very proud of what we are coming up with within our budget.
I just want to add that I'm very pleased with the progress. I like the idea of having a travel exhibits, Quinlan Center, the Senior Center, and also at the City Hall. But one thing I would also add to that is that in as much we would like to get some input from the teens about the library, I would like to extend this invitation to the seniors of Cupertino, because these seniors are the ones that will be also using the library.
Sure. I just want to thank the staff and the architect for really great work. It's a lot of work, and I think that you must have put in a lot of hours. And even though you are professionals, this is a schematic that obviously you're very proud of. It's like your baby, and even though you have a very professional demeanor, I know that you also feel strongly about it, and it's good. It's a very good thing to feel strongly about, and it's something that as we look at it and think about it, one gets really warmed up with it and think of the possibilities that are possible as we go down this road. And so I just want to thank you really for your excellent work and listening to the community and trying to incorporate as much of the hopes and desires and needs of our communities as is fiscally possible and budget-wise. Just a few thoughts. There's a lot of good things about it that has been mentioned by other council members, and I really do share in those views, like the cafe is a great idea, the courtyard's a great idea, the community building. Each piece of it is very thoughtfully done, and the landscaping, and it's great to see how it all comes together. And so I will not repeat some of those things. What I would like, there are a few things that I hope that you would elaborate more as we move to the next phase, as we move to more details. I really do like the idea that our mayor mentioned about talking to some of the youths, maybe our youth commission, maybe a few more other people. Some kind of focus group might be very helpful. I think in the last meeting we had some community members able to give some of their feedback. I think those were useful. It'll be great we mentioned that we wanted the youth to have a way to participate in this and to feel that this is their library and it's cool to hang out in the library. So I think talking with them would be very helpful. I also like Patrick Kwok's idea, Councilmember Kwok's idea about talking with our seniors. Senior Center is really now grown, and we have many diverse groups of seniors here, and I think that a library can be a great support for our different groups of seniors, and having some focus groups talking with them, I think, could yield some very good good insights about how to make that space special for them sometimes. The study room idea, I think, is related to the students. I think it's we're going in the right direction there, whether it be one big room or separate little rooms or whatnot. I think talking with the youth, you will find out. The covered walkway, I could see how architecturally it's important to have those both for the sun and so on. And I know that we're trying to, this is a tough question in a sense. We want to build something that's probably is distinctive, but at the same time really wears well over time, obviously. And we're all afraid of sometimes these covered walkways, sometimes some of them look really aged. You know what I mean, right? And there are others that age really nicely, and we don't have tremendous budget to do it, so we're always, as usual, asking for the impossible. But that is a issue, because a lot of times people see the covered archways even more than the building in some ways, because there's so much at eye level and so on. And some thoughts to it would be very helpful. I think the city really needs meeting rooms for about 40 people. I think we have some rooms that are smaller, the 20 people rooms, but we really need some rooms for 40 people. And in this reiteration, if you think that the lobby space can be a room such as that, I would suggest that you, in the next reiteration, call it a lobby / meeting room, and articulate that and let us know how it will work as a meeting room, while maybe other people might be going to other rooms, and just issues like that, and to work on that. If the courtyard is going to be used as an outside reading room area, I think it's a great idea. I'd like to see you flesh that out a little bit more so that it really does happen in that way. I think that that's a good way to go because of the weather, and it's a very valuable resource. I think that the other things I'm sure you will look at, but I think restrooms are obviously important. I guess we all have these experiences of being in a plaza and all the restrooms are locked and can't get in and so on. And so I think that bears thinking about. Somehow, as we go down the road and become more detailed, even some inclination of the staffing issues might be, or operations, or how much maintenance is this going to be, just ballpark, just so that we have a sense. For instance, the question about the cafe, who's going to run it? How's it going to work? Just give us an idea, because that also translates into operational costs and so on. And the library, is it still the assumption is pretty much the same size of library, librarian force that we're using? Is that assumption still good, and so on? All in all, I'm really looking forward to your next phase, looking at your schematics, because it's always the details that really matters a lot. And as we go to that level of thinking, it's very exciting, and it's has so much in it. And again, just to really appreciate your very wonderful work.
Thank you, Michael. Bella, do you have any closing comments to make?
I believe many of my comments have been alluded to by my colleagues here. I would just bring up a couple of key issues and just dovetail on something that Michael just hit on, which is staffing inside the library. I'd also ask you to look at staffing outside, because now with the addition of the orchard, the parking orchard, and trees in the courtyard, etc., what does that do? And Ralph, that's probably more of a question for you with your maintenance staff. And ask that we pursue an agreement on loaning and lending with De Anza College, who has a pretty extensive library also. We don't always have to think of big four-year private universities. Richard, you made the comment that we may build something and your fear is that nobody will come. And I don't see that here at all. I think people like to come where places where they feel welcome and there's something going on. And as I'm looking at this three-dimensional rendering, I think people will feel welcomed, and there's a lot to be going on here. So I'm just very excited that this is moving forward.
This project has been a challenge to work on. it was a campaign issue when Michael and I last ran, and probably in the election before that, and maybe even the one before that one. And it's always been with tremendous pressure. There are the people that think we shouldn't spend any money here at all. There are people that think that we should have little satellite libraries. There are people that think that books are going to be gone pretty soon. There are people that believe the library needs to be much, much larger. There are people that think we can't afford to do anything. There are people that want big open spaces and say that they can get by with less staffing, and there are people that are very skeptical about the staffing levels. It's been really a challenge. It's been a challenge, at some time, a strain on friendships, because everybody involved, taking one position or another, are all connected here, and we see you around town, and it's just tough, because there's been full of controversy and mostly dilemma. I think we owe a lot of thanks to the people that have been involved in getting us this far, because it has been really tough. And I would say especially Michael and Sandy, who have chaired the committee that pulled together the community, and Ralph, your participation in that has been very, very important too, in getting people to common ground. It is a huge challenge to get people to common ground on a project like this, and you deserve a lot of thanks, and I really appreciate your hard work, and the work of the entire committee, and a lot of dedicated people, friends of library people, people out in the community, and librarians and staff people with the library have given tremendous amounts of time, I mean hundreds of hours, to see that this project gets off to a good start. And there are times when we've had some pretty good disagreements, and everybody stays engaged and stays donating time and energy, and we all try to stay civil through it. So I want to thank everybody that's gotten us this far. It's a tremendous piece of work. And finally, the community who has stepped up at every turn. Every time we ask for community input, we get a room full. And we've had plenty of meetings, and Michael and Sandra have certainly been to many more than I have on the topic. But the community has been great in terms of giving their time to see that the library works well for the city. So we are really blessed to have such a great group of people involved, working so hard to get such a great project started. So I'm enthusiastic. I think this thing has sprung from the community. We've got great expertise on board now, which will ensure that we get to build it. And Ralph will be there with his iron fist to keep it on budget and on time. And I'm excited. Let's go.
Mr. Mayor, we would like a motion from you on the approval of this, as it's stated in the agenda, the final conceptual design of the Cupertino Civic Center and the Cupertino Public Library, if
Let's
that's
see
your
if we can
desire.
find somebody that will make that motion. And there we go.
Second.
There's a second from our committee heads. How appropriate. Please, let's have a voice vote, please. Say aye if you agree.
Aye.
Any nays? Don't you dare. We're unanimous. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.